apologize for the noise. I just noticed that my mic was making a lot of noise, so I changed it to the other side. I had just bought me another mic, and I did a video review of this mic and headphone set that I bought that you can see on my channel. You gotta remember to post it. But yeah, Westworld is an excellent TV show. You need to check it out if you're so inclined. If you got HBO anyway, it's a lot of nudity and sex and stuff in it, so you've been forewarned if you're underage, so don't be watching it. Actually, that's improper English. Don't be watching it. Don't worry about watching it. So yeah, Westworld, I like it. We're just now getting into the deep lore of everything. You can kind of explore the different characters and stuff in it. And one thing that I noticed about Westworld, you would think that the government would probably be more, I guess, tightly regulated of that kind of technology, because it's extremely dangerous, as you might imagine. For the simple fact, it's not about always needing government to regulate stuff. It's because you can replace people, and nobody would relatively know that a person's really been replaced unless they did probably specific medical exams. And the problem is, even in the actual Simps that are in Westworld, I guess they're called hosts in that one, they have DNA. Because there's one scene where they had to do like a identification or authentication to use some of the equipment, and one of the main characters, Bernard, he's actually a simp in there, and then he did a DNA scan and he actually has DNA. So that's actually pretty impressive technology. I'm assuming that I'm not really giving any away of the parts of the plot away, but we learned in the last season that Bernard is actually Arnold, or a facsimile made of him, I guess. And he probably shares a lot of Arnold's DNA. But these Simps are pretty close to human. I mean, you would almost not be able to recognize them. And it's almost just like Fallout 4. You got like I guess you have not Gen 1 Simps, but I guess probably Gen 2, because you had the first ones that were kind of mechanical, and what they actually did was not like how the Institute, when they did their Simps, they kept upgrading the ones that they first made, right? They have the other ones too that look pretty much human. They have skin and blood and everything, but then they went back to their Gen 1s and upgraded them as well, because originally they had the mechanical parts inside, and then they came back with bio flesh and all the other stuff, blood, and all the stuff that makes them look like humans. So unless you cut one of the things open, you really wouldn't know that it's a Simp. And even probably a rudimentary autopsy done by a trained medical professional, he may not exactly know that he's actually dealing with a Simp. I mean, it showed on the episode where they actually cut one in the brain open. It has like, I guess it has something akin to spinal fluid or brain. We know actually your brain has fluid in it anyway, but it's a central processor embedded in the Simp's brain. And that's just like the ones in Fallout. You know how you get the Simp components where That seems to be on like the more advanced simps that have all fully grown skin and all that. It seems to me that the only parts of them that look synthetic are what's inside the brain. But you have to actually cut the brain open to even see that. If you just cut the skull open and there's a brain in it, just like a regular person. But the process is actually inside of the brain. And you look at all the different things you can do with the technology. I'm actually shocked that you don't have people running around with prosthetic bodies. You know, maybe they do. Maybe they just hadn't showed that yet. But I would think that they would probably, have full prosthetic bodies, and maybe the rich people would be purchasing some of these bodies to maybe have their brains implanted. I mean, looking at the technology, excuse me, there's no reason why you probably couldn't put a human brain in one of these synths. I mean, you look at all the different technology that they use to repair them. There's no reason why that wouldn't transfer over to human, because they're essentially human. Excuse me. So yeah, they have a lot of, probably the robotic parts and the simps are actually all in the processor, which is embedded in the brain, but everything else is pretty much human. I'm actually surprised that the UN hadn't tried to extend them rights or something like that. So we don't actually know how much excuse me again. We don't actually know how much of their free will is akin to actual consciousness, or is it more or less due to programming. See, because like there's another show that I like to watch, Humans, that come on ANC, and they're not really simps. They're more or less straight up androids, but they seem to had a software update that gave them all consciousness, which is pretty interesting subject. And the problem is, anytime that you make any contraption like they made these movies that look human and actually have the same kind of hang-ups that humans have, it's going to be difficult. Just from all the stuff that goes along with being a human, all our hang-ups and desires and wants and stuff like that. So it makes it an interesting subject indeed. So another show I was checking out was on Netflix. I love Netflix, but it's called, I had to actually look at it, but it's the one about the car racing. I think it's called The Fastest Car. And this is the base premise behind this is that you have regular sleeper cars, and then it has what you have called a supercar. You don't have to explain what a supercar is, like a Lamborghini or Ferrari or McLaren, Porsche. And they have these average everyday Joes racing their cars and stuff. But the thing that I know about cars, I'm pretty much a real gearhead and a tuner, and I really love cars, but the guys always talking about, oh, our car is so fast and they got the turbos, but I don't really see any of those cars on there with any serious power, because most of the time, if you got a turbo car, you would think that the cars they would pick would be a little better suited for what they're trying to do. I understand the whole premise of having a sleeper car, but any decent tuner worth his salt would totally destroy these guys because like looking at the car and it's a turbo and the main thing, well actually let me back up a little bit. I saw one guy that had an early model, I think it was 1980s Corolla, and his probably might have been an amazing car if he ever got it to run, but it had a lot of mechanical issues, so he couldn't run because the ECU didn't operate correctly. And he didn't say what kind of engine it was in there, but maybe it was a 2JZ. That's the engine that Toyota has. That's a real popular engine for racing. But the thing about it, if you're going to make a car that's really going to run against Ferrari and Lamborghinis and stuff, which can be done, but the platforms that most of these guys use, in my opinion, they were too heavy. The cars I would have used, if I was going to pick a car, I would use, you know, the normal staple of a tuner car. You know, if you're going to go American, get the early model of the new gen Mustang. You know, that would be a good car to modify because nice, relatively cheap, available parts, large horsepower, you know, V8 engine, all the nice things you want to make a nice car go fast, right? Not these you know, these guys, you know, he might say, well, I'll spend $400 for the car, but you know, you're putting $10,000 or $20,000 in the motor, and that's all well and fine and good. But if a guy buys maybe a Roush Mustang or maybe a Shelby GT, and he puts maybe $10,000 or $15,000 in it, he has the car decently tuned, he will destroy these guys. You know, so a lot of cars I'm looking at, I'm saying I wouldn't have picked that one. I might have, if I was doing an American car, I would either use a Mustang, Camaro, the new Dodge Challenger, or the Dodge Charger. One good thing about a Dodge Charger is it's actually an all-wheel drive car. And you can get the Hemi in it, you can do a lot of work to it, and that could be a pretty fast car. And all these old buckets that they use for the most part, some of the cars weren't bad, they were nice cars, and some of the guys had they put a lot of money in the cars. So it was actually, you know, pretty cool what they did, but I didn't really expect them to really do anything for one simple reason. Despite what anybody may tell you, if you got a turbo car, you can really tell if the car has a lot of horsepower. And the reason being is mostly all tuners that have a turbo powered car, I'm not talking about with nitrous, but say if you have turbo, you need to have what's called anti-lag. You're going to have a two-step, you're going to have a launch control. And if you're wondering what does all that junk do, basically what it does is if you think about a turbo car, well, okay, so if you have a turbo in your car, when you have anti-lag technology, it makes the turbo essentially function as a jet engine. And what I'm saying is an oversimplification of it, but basically what happens is it dumps it dumps extra fuel into the engine, and that fuel gets dumped into the exhaust system basically, and because the exhaust system's hot, it detonates. So what happens is the pressure build up from the explosion in the exhaust, it keeps your turbo spun up. And it's just like where a jet engine works, because once you get a jet engine started, the actual combustion of the fuel keeps the turbine spinning. That's what is how they spin, right? So as long as you have fuel, the turbines will spin. You don't have to need any external device to keep the turbo spinning, if that makes sense. Same thing with the jet engine. Once you get the blades spinning, the actual combustion of the engine keeps the blades moving. That's how you look in the jet engine, you see the multi-layers of the different compressor blades. I mean, excuse me, the compressor blades. The reason why they spin is because the combustion, right? The pressure pulls air over the blades, and they're all connected from the same shaft. So as long as the first set of blades turned and the back set of blades are turned, well, same thing happens with the turbo. And that's really how you can tell or not whether a car has a lot of horsepower that's been modified. You know, if you see these cars, none of these cars had any anti-lag on them, so that means that their turbos are going to lag a lot. Even the guys with big turbos, it's not really doing anything. I mean, you've seen people with, there's videos of people with Honda Civics just destroying the Lamborghinis just because he had two-step anti-lag and launch control, and it was pretty much tuned. These cars don't seem to be tuned or dialed in by dyno, so you can do it, but you need to have it set up properly. Nothing like these cars were set up properly. There's one guy that had a pretty cool looking rat rod, and it had nitrous and everything. It was a pretty cool looking car, but he didn't win. I'm thinking it was the guy with the Thunderbird that won. Hold on, let me adjust my headphones. Excuse me again. But you could think about it. If the guy probably, I don't know, took maybe a good 20 grand and dumped it into a GT350, put a decent body kit on it, you know, upgraded the turbo, upgraded the engine, he could have made an amazing car that would just destroy some of the supercars. Or if, say, if he had the Focus RS, Rally Sport, or even a new Honda Civic Type R, and just did some modifications to the turbo and dial it in properly, it'll be a nice running car. And you could give any of those, any of those guys a run for their money. I mean, if you look at the Top Gear video of, I don't remember what season it was, but the guys from Top Gear, they went to an American drag race. Oh wait, something is coming. What is this critical? Oh, one of these guys. Good night. Okay. And they just got, the Top Gear guys just got destroyed by tuner cars. And that's the thing, if you got a tuner car and you got all this stuff dialed in properly, you can have a fast car. You know, personally, what I would have picked, maybe a Mitsubishi Evo, or an early models G35 Coupe all-wheel drive. Since it has all-wheel drive, you can do a lot of work to it. Put a nice turbo on it and get a lot of decent horsepower. Although you need to do a lot of modifications to that. I think either the G35 or the 350 GT, anything over 400 horsepower, you're gonna have a lot of trouble. You know, you have to do a lot of modifications to the transmission and the rear end. But other than that, you know, you should be fine. And the main problem with the American cars, a lot of the older ones are just heavy bricks. I mean, if I was going for old school, I would do maybe a Chevelle, Dodge Charger, like the one you see Vin Diesel in the Fast and the Furious, 68 Camaro, or a Hemi Cuda, something like that. Cougar Mustang. Cars like those seem to me what I would use if I wanted to go the muscle car route, not big heavy trucks, or like one guy had a truck, another guy had a old, what was that car? It was a old Cadillac. Those cars are so heavy. They're like, you know, big boats. So, oh, hospitals resuming? Okay. I'm killing ghouls now. This is always going to be a challenge. But it seems to be a pretty cool show. You can check it out if you like cars. Another show that I really enjoyed watching was Altered Carbon. I think I even might have read the book back in the day, but I don't remember much from the book. I do remember I'm talking about sleeves and swapping bodies and stuff, so that probably had to be the same show. I really enjoyed that. That was a pretty cool movie, pretty cool concept. Actually, wasn't a movie. It was actually a series on Netflix, but it shows what happened when people have too much money and where humans go when your lifespan is extended way, way longer than it probably should be. You go down into a depravity, you know. It's like the Eldar from Warhammer 40K. You know, once you get to the point that you control everything, you're not satisfied with normal things anymore. That's pretty much what it was about. Pretty cool concept. And I'll give you a little more about that in the next video. So I'm going to cut this one off right here and I'm going to pick it back up. And we can continue talking about Altered Carbon.